Welcome to the Smart Money Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Arese. I'm the founder of smartmoneyafrica.org, a financial education platform tailored to the African millennial woman. But I'm probably best known as the author of two best-selling personal finance books, The Smart Money Woman and The Smart Money Tribe. I love having money conversations that encourage African women to think bigger and become the chief financial officers of their own personal economies. This podcast is a weekly show that will focus on powerful conversations, stories, and practical lessons that teach African millennial women how to make money, keep money, and grow money. Hi, potties. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Arese, the executive producer of a ding 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 Netflix show. This is how all my conversations have gone this week. Telling everyone that The Smart Money Woman is coming to Netflix. I'm so proud of myself, guys. And I hope that you share in my excitement and show Netflix how much you love the books and how much you love the series, or how much I'm sure you're going to love the series. Anyway, my next guest is someone I think is truly brilliant, and I stalk her on Instagram and watch her stories because she has all this insightful information and has the most interesting conversations. Yasmin Belo-Osagie. Yasmin is the co-founder of She Leads Africa, the #1 destination for smart and ambitious African women. Yasmin has had a stellar Ivy League education. She graduated cum laude from Princeton University with a bachelor's degree in history and a minor in finance. Thereafter, she completed a culinary course at the renowned Le Cordon Bleu in Paris before getting her master's in business administration from Stanford and a JD from Harvard Law. She worked at McKinsey before she started She Leads Africa, and is also on the board of FSDH Asset Management. Yasmin was listed among the 20 youngest power women in Africa by Forbes in 2014. And in December 2016, She Leads Africa was invited to ring the closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. And this is the first African startup to do this. We talk about everything from how she built She Leads Africa to using your privilege for impact, and she shares her personal investment strategy and lots more. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think that there's so many gems to learn from it, so enjoy. It's also a bit long, but we were having a good time. Enjoy it. Hi, Yasmin.
Hi, girl. Hi, Arese.
You guys, Yasmin has
Thank you so much.
Busy. We had scheduled one interview, and I had a mommy issue, and we had to reschedule. My babe did not answer me for like 2 months, 3 months, as it again. And I was like, I love it. Set boundaries. Nobody gets to waste my time.
No, it wasn't even that. I completely understood. Honestly, the last 3 months have just been really busy. I've been all over the place, but I mean, we finally made it. We've made it, shot.
I know.
So I'm just going to focus on that.
I'm so excited because I was stalking her like a crazy person, because Yasmin is so smart and she has such amazing insight to so many different things, not just business and finance. And I thought she'd be such an amazing guest for the podcast. So Yasmin, please feel free to share a lot of your efiko on this episode. So let's start with, you're known mostly for being a co-founder at She Leads Africa, right? So I want you to basically share your story about how you started and, you know, how you built this amazing platform.
Sure. No, sure. Thank you so much for having me on. Okay. So, you know, She Leads Africa, we started it, it's crazy now because I think it was 2014, so about 7 years ago now. And my end, I would say it's actually very random to me still to this day that I ended up being a co-founder of this type of business, because yes, I am indeed a woman, But it is not like in the, 5-10 years previous to SLA, I was like doing all these like women in leadership things. Like I wasn't that person. I was living my life, doing my thing, doing my work, but I wasn't necessarily that engaged in a structural sense and an organizational sense with issues that are focused on women. So the way I got involved, like all interesting stories, there was a boy involved.
Oh.
There was a boy involved. I know, terrible. So I remember I when I moved back to Nigeria, I was working at a consulting company called McKinsey & Company. And it was just like a really stressful job. I feel like I was always on like really tough projects, like always like tired, exhausted. I had also got to a point where I'd been dating someone, we've been dating like for 4 or 5 years. Like I thought we were going to get married, but we ended up breaking up. And so I think between those two things, like the stress of work, also just becoming a little bit disillusioned with work and just feeling, when you get to this point with work where you're like,
I want to do something extra that fulfills me.
Yeah, you've just kind of gotten to this point where I'm like, okay, I've gotten good at this, like, but I don't really see what me being good at this, like, how is this affecting the broader world? Like, why does what I do matter? Like, why is this relevant? Why is this interesting? Like, I was kind of going through that. And so one of the things that I said to myself was, look, I need to start making sure that on my weekends, I'm not just spending time at home, depressed out of a breakup, tired from work. Like, I need to just like start going out. Like, I just need to like do something, right? So I said to myself, like every single weekend, literally I said every single weekend I have to make sure like I leave the house. I have to do one activity, just like pick one activity and do it, because you just can't be spending like all the weekends at home moping or like at the office. It's not acceptable. So one weekend I went to a women's in leadership conference that my mom was speaking at. So my mom's a lawyer and was invited to speak at this conference. And so I said, okay, I'll go along with her. This actually sounds very interesting. And whilst I was there, I ran into Afua, who is, my co-founder. And at the time, she used to work at McKinsey as well, but we didn't know each other like very, very well. You know people who you're in the office, but we weren't very good friends. And she was volunteering at the conference. So I went up to her during the break and I was like, hey, look, I'm really looking for something to I need another outlet for my energy. Like work is just not doing it for me. I'm going through this breakup. Like I want another outlet of energy. How did you find out about volunteering in this conference? Because this is definitely the type of thing that I would like to do. I loved all the speakers. I loved being in a space where women were coming together to learn about how they can grow and develop. I just really enjoyed the environment. And so I thought, look, I would love to do more of these things.
Before you go,
and
I just want to point out that this is such an ethical way of getting over a breakup, and I love it. I hope that more girls because think about it, most girls, you break up with a guy and then it's going out to parties, drinking, hanging out with your friends, crying on the phone.
Yeah.
Yours is, how can I be a more productive member of society? How old were you?
I was like 20, 22, 23, something like 23. Actually, like 23, 24. I like 23, 24, something like that. But please, I said, like, I don't want to. I did my fair share of drinking and going out to parties. I had a fun year. Let me not lie. Definitely, once I got out of the profession, I had a very sweet. I'm an enjoyment queen. Yeah. I don't want to make it seem like all I was doing was working. But this was one thing. So definitely, I feel like women, if that's what you want to do, do you. But for me, I need to like just keep busy.
But I think that this definitely gives a lot of insight. Like, I think if anyone's listening to this and they're like, how to deal with some sort of difficult thing that happens, even if it's not a breakup, right? Like, it's always good to balance that, having fun to get your mind off it, but also finding productive things, to do.
100%. So 100%. And I think that, like, it can be a hobby. It can be, starting a blog. It can be reading more. But I just feel that like it's very, very important. Like when you have a lot of, anxious energy, upset energy, to just try and like transform it into something that is productive. Because if not, it can actually end up being like very, very destructive if you don't watch how I think you like channel and target your energies towards like the right thing. So I feel like when I'm going through tough times, a lot of the times I feel like I make the biggest strides in like career or professional stuff, because I suddenly feel like, oh my God, I have all this energy and I need to focus it on something else. But anyway, so yeah.
Did Efo think you were crazy, like when you came up to her?
No, she didn't. She was like, oh, okay, yeah, like I actually think this is very interesting. And she said to me, well, one idea that I've been working on, because Efo had a much longer history of working in this space. Yeah. Before she moved back to Nigeria, she used to work at an organization called Emily's List, which works in the US, which works with female candidates who want to run for office. She also used to run like resume clinics for young women in Ghana over her summer. So she's been in the space of kind of women's leadership for a while. And so when I started speaking to her, she said, hey, look, one idea that I've been having is a pitch competition for African women who are really trying to build like scalable businesses. She was like, look, I've been actually thinking about it for like maybe the last 6 to 9 months, almost a year. But, she hadn't really been able to get together the right team to actually execute it. And so initially I had the idea. I was really excited. I love business. I love, startups and all the energy that was coming around that. I love that it focused on women. And so I was like, this is a great idea and something that I would love to be a part of. And so Monday came, and the way consulting works, you fly off to like different projects that you're on. And one day, 2 days, like if I didn't come back to me. So I'm emailing her and I'm like, yo, that idea for the pitch competition, I love this so much. I haven't heard back from you. I'm ready to start. Like, I feel like I had to email her like 2 or 3 times to be like, yo, what's going on? Let's get together. Like, I'm ready to work. And, eventually, she responded, we had a call. And then we were like, okay, cool. Let's put together this pitch competition. We put together that first pitch competition. And it's so interesting because at the time when we started it, the idea, it wasn't meant to be a business. It was meant to be a pitch competition. Literally, SLA, we thought it would be something whereby on the side of our jobs, we do this one pitch competition like every year. And it's like, an interesting and fun thing that you do, but we never thought that we would turn it into an organization.
Wow.
And it was only after the first pitch competition where we started emailing like, hey, what else do you do? That we started thinking, okay, cool. Is there a revenue model that we can build behind what it is that we're trying to do that allows us to create a sustainable business organization? Because I think neither of us really wanted to do the whole nonprofit thing where you're always having to fundraise this, that, and the third,
Yeah.
And so we really did want to see, okay, cool. Is there a way that we can actually generate revenue for this organization that can grow and it can scale? And that's kind of when we shifted from, okay, this is a project, this is a company. And then it's been 7 years.
An amazing years. With
7 hard years. It's been amazing and it's been hard.
But you guys make it look easy though. You make it look very easy. I feel like She Leads Africa. I remember when it started and it's grown into such an amazing resource platform for African women. And it's one of the things that's truly Pan-African. And I love that about it. So
thank you. It's so interesting that you say that because when we're on the inside, the activities that we're doing are somewhat similar. You're putting out content, you're hosting events, you're doing partnerships. Those are kind of the 3 things that you're always doing. Yeah. And so in your mind, it doesn't feel like it's changed. You know what I mean? It's just all kind of feels the same. And especially because so much of what we do was digital. And so it's oftentimes really, really weird when you speak to other people and they're like, oh my God, it's grown so much and it's done this. And you're just sitting there being like, it literally feels like it's the same size, the same thing. So it's very weird how there's oftentimes just a real disjunct between the way you see your business or your career and the way other people see it. And I think that learning to appreciate the little successes that you've had, appreciate and understand how to take perspective on your business and your career in a way that doesn't compare it to what you had hoped it would be, but instead just compares it to where you started, I think is a lesson that I've really, if I would say there's one thing that I've learned through the 7 years of She Leads Africa, it's that, because there's so many times where I think we're spending inordinate amount of time beating ourselves up over the business, feeling like it wasn't good enough, not enjoying the process, not enjoying the journey, not being proud of ourselves. It always felt like a constant feeling of nervousness and anxiety and battle and not good enough. And it just, I would say, like, it oftentimes just made the whole thing like not fun and exciting in a way that, like, when I do another business or when I go through the next stage in my life, like, I know that this is something that I have to fundamentally do very, very differently, because it's not a sustainable way to operate. It's just very depressing and it's like not fun.
So tell me about the revenue streams, like, so for She Leads Africa. So you do events,
Sure,
partnerships, like, walk me through
yeah.
that.
Yeah. So the bulk of our revenue comes from essentially marketing partnerships we do with various organizations. Now, typically what happens is that an organization might, and marketing may be, there are usually a couple of goals that they have. It might be that, for example, they're trying to just reach more women to, help purchase their product, to like purchase their products, or they want to grow their brand name and voice to like the community that we've been able to build. And so typically what happens is that we will partner with them to develop concepts and projects that make sense for their brand and gives them the ability to shine and get their name out there, because at the end of the day, look, they're a business, right? Like, they're also trying to make money. And I think that we try to be realistic about that. But then the second thing is we then also try to create projects that also are beneficial to our end consumer. To give an example, I mean, we have been working with Facebook for about 2 or 3 years. And the project that we have with them is training people on, how to do digital marketing, how to use WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram to grow your business. Now, obviously, for an organization like Facebook, they're trying to do those things because they want more people to be on their platforms. They want more people to be using their products. They want more people to be, maybe spending money on ads. But there's a clear like business objective for them, which makes sense. And then obviously for us, because of the way the program is designed, it's actually giving knowledge and information to our community members and the end user. Another example might be, we have our events, something like, let's say, a sleigh festival, right? Where, people come, so fun, right? Like, there are networking events, there are speakers, there are all these things that are good for the audience and allows them to gain knowledge, expertise, build relationships. But all the brands that sponsor that event are obviously just trying to kind of get like marketing shine. And so I would say that those types of like brand-led, like either sponsorship or marketing partnerships consist about 90% of our revenue. We have not necessarily, I think, done the greatest job, but I don't know if it's we haven't tried hard enough or we haven't come up with the right product to really think about how do we generate revenue from our community members. But I think that is something that we're going to have to think about increasingly, because, you do need to balance. Obviously, the big contracts are good, but if one day a brand decides not to work with you, it's very problematic, right? They also have like a lot of pricing pressure that they can put on you and all of these sorts of things. And all of that can be very, very difficult to like manage your budget. And, we've had years where we've made a loss, where we've then had to like bridge the gap. And so I do think that like we're going to have to find ways where we actually like monetize our community members and our audience who hopefully like the stuff that we do, to kind of have a more balanced revenue profile.
So I wanted you to talk me through your revenue streams, because I feel like what She Leads Africa has accomplished in such a short period of time is so phenomenal. Sleigh Festival is one of my favorite things. I think I spoke at the first one. And I just loved the fact that we could execute something like that in Nigeria. Like, it's such a brilliant concept that I think can definitely go Pan-African. And you did one in South Africa, didn't you?
Yes, at the beginning of last year. No, Sleigh Festival, it's really fun. I mean, it's so stressful. I mean, so maybe just for the audience who, if you guys haven't heard about it, I mean, Sleigh Festival, it's a festival, and we try to call it like a festival of where you come together to learn, to network, and to have fun. And so we will have a typical Sleigh Festival. We'll have, 2 or 3 main stages where we will have various panelists and speakers. In addition, we will have sort of like smaller masterclasses on like very like specific topics. But throughout the avid or throughout the venue, we also have like really fun sponsor activations. We have sections where we have games. We have sections where you can do networking. We have sections where you can get kind of like one-on-one advice from specific experts. And I think what we try to do throughout the whole experience is to just make sure that it's like fun and like a turn up time. One of the things that's really, really important to me and to AFWA is that I think that there's always been this perspective or this paradigm where it's like, to be a successful woman or, to be this type of woman, you have to be like super serious. And you have to make your hair and it has to be very neat. And, you should be crossing your legs and like all these sort of things. It's like, I just kind of think it's bullshit, right? Like, so for us, it was like, no, I want to come. I want to listen to dope music. I want to have good drinks. I love cocktails, but hey, I also want to be able to like listen to some ideas about building your business or about finance or about mental health. And it's like, why can't we have that multiplicity, that duplicity of women in like one space? And so that's why you'll see that like we didn't call it a conference. Like we didn't want it to be kind of like the sort of standard women in leadership type conferences that are like quite serious, yada yada yada. Like we really wanted it to feel like young and very much like of our generation. So that hopefully can just give a bit of perspective to Slay Festival to people who might not have heard about it.
I doubt that you can be an African millennial and not have heard about Slay Festival. I love it because it basically turned that whole model on its head, right? So I've been used to going to women's conferences where I have to wear a suit and you have to be serious and it's lots of older people. But I think you guys did such an amazing job of creating a space that young women didn't feel intimidated by, where you could be ambitious and talk about important things, but also like have fun as well. So I really appreciate that.
Definitely.
I'm gonna ask your branding, right? It's weird because if someone asked me to identify your target audience, right, they almost start looking alike. I would say a She Leads Africa woman is likely to have a natural hair or embrace. She's likely to wear very minimal makeup and, is fun, but very, serious-minded as well. And if you look at your audience, I feel like it kind of replicates you and Ifwa in a way. Do you agree?
That's so funny. Oh, that's so interesting. I hope that doesn't actually make us just really narcissistic people.
No, but I think it's something that we all need to sort of learn to replicate in our businesses in a way, in that I feel like it's a signifier that you have a clear idea of who your target audience is. Like you had a plan and you attracted the exact kind of people that you were looking for. Would you agree?
Definitely. No, I do agree. And I think that it is something that we try to be very intentional about. There are a few things that I think are very important when people think about building a brand. The first thing that we did when we were thinking about, okay, what's the vibe? And it probably is a reflection of us because it's probably a reflection of the type of environment that we felt was missing, right? Because at the end of the day, you start a business because you feel like you see something that's missing and you're trying to fill that gap. And I think what we saw is that, look, we feel like there's a gap there's some type of woman who's like, I'm not that kind of super like nice, bad babe, even though I love this house, but I'm not that bad, man. I'm just here, trying to do my work. Like, I'm not super formal. So we were trying to create an environment, I think, that we felt was missing in Nigeria, where I had found that at the time, and I think that things have changed a lot now, that a lot of the women's groups and organizations tended to be a little bit older. They tended to be more formal. It tended to be just like less chilled. And I think with Ifwa and myself, we're very chilled, very like simple people. We just kind of want to do our work and like move on. There's not too much like phase and FEZ and all of those sorts of things. In fact, I remember when we first started doing events, people would come and they would be like, oh, why are the co-founders in jeans and t-shirts? Like, this is really not a good reflection of the brand. And what we would say is like, no, you don't understand the brand. Because my point is like, if you want a situation where people are going to be in suits and all of this, there are so many places in Nigeria that you should go. You shouldn't come to the SLA one. You should go to one of those. You know, I believe that we're a capitalist system. People should have choices. Not everything is for everybody, and not everybody has to like everything. So I think one of the things that was very, very important to us when we first started off was that when we thought about the brand, when I think about the brand of She Leads Africa, I think of a person. And we actually wrote this down. I can find it. It's like, if She Leads Africa was a person, who would she be? And very specifically said, it's going to be like, you know, all of us, we have that keep it real friend. You know, you have your smart friend who, you know, she's on her stuff and she's going to keep it real with you. You know, she will be enthusiastic and she'll be supportive and she'll be like your bestie, but she's also going to keep it real with you and be like, hey, babe, this is kind of some of the things that like you need to think about in a very keep it real way. She's going to speak to you like a friend. You know what I mean? The language that you talk to each other in the voice of a friend. And I feel like it's like to start with that SLA brand, we have to like see that person. We have to know who she was. And I think that we built that character having looked at ourselves, our friends, the type of environment it is that we wanted to create. And then once you create that brand, it is that you, in a very consistent fashion, showcase that brand to people and be comfortable that it's not going to be for every single person.
Let's talk more about money. So when it came down to like raising capital for the business, like how did you go about that?
Sure. So we bootstrapped and got some money from family for the first 5 years of the business. So for the first 5 years, it was basically revenue. And then from, you know, family and friends, we were able to get about $150,000 or so over like the first 5 years. We then, no, I lied, 6 years.
In the first, this is 150K over the first 6 years.
Yes.
So throughout the period, and was it debt or equity?
No, it was equity. And it was, it was that 150K, not like over the whole period. So I would say that most of the money that we made during those 5 or 6 years was like from our customers. You know what I mean? Like the basics of like, you know, you sell something, you make money, you cover your costs, you keep the profit, like that kind of really the boring business model, right? Like I would say that if I break down the timing for the first 2 or 3 years, it was fully bootstrapped. It was like, we make money, we sell, you know, we do money. When I didn't take salaries, you know, we kept the team super, super lean. And that kind of allowed us to cover our costs. Then got about 150,000 from, it was all family. And then, you know, that plus revenue then took us, you know, for another 4 years. So for those 6 years in total, you know, we were kind of mainly just like living off our revenue. Then kind of after the 6th year, we did raise a small seed round. It was about $650,000. And this is a deeper story, and I'm sure we'll go into it now. What we actually was at the beginning of this year, so about a year and a half after raising the money, we actually decided to return money to our investors. And just, you know, keep the company as wholly owned by myself and Afa. I'm happy to go into like more detail about why that happened and why we did that.
I feel like we should talk about this because I think that there's not a lot of stories or transparency around this whole process of raising capital and how difficult it can be. And I think it's so interesting that you returned the money. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And $650,000 to your investors in a country where people are looking for money, Yasmin. What?
I know. What's going on with you guys? So I think, it was a couple of things for us. I think one, at the beginning of the year, this year, I think both Afa and myself were feeling a little bit burnt out, if I'm going to be honest. I think it started first with Afa, but I think was also something that had been affecting me. I think, you know, for both of us, for me personally, I'd been running SLA kind of whilst, you know, I was at graduate school. So I was doing a business degree and also running SLA. And I found that to be a very emotionally tiring process. I'm not going to lie. I think similarly for Afua, you're living in Nigeria, you're just not Nigerian, you're living in Nigeria, it's a crazy place. Dealing with running this business, I think the economy had just been like so difficult. So just like the stress of running like a business during this time, I think was really challenging, especially because look, it's not a technology company. This is a business that's like essentially lives off of marketing budgets from companies. And you'll find that in recessions and tough times, it's usually marketing budgets that get cut first, right? And so I think that like when we started in 2014, like marketing budgets were great. Like I remember when GCB was spending how much on this fashion week, and those are the good old OBJ, Jonah times. Do you understand what I'm saying? It was a very different time from when we actually then like from the subsequent years after like we started the business. And so I think that was one thing. I think of, look, we actually just wanted a break. And so one of the things that we started thinking through at the beginning of this year was, okay, what is a transition plan that allows the two of us to take a year off and just figure out what it is that we want to do? See is this something that we want to do for, the rest of our life? Just think through all of that.
Yeah.
But I think that for me, like, once you take people's money, there's a responsibility there.
Yeah.
Right? Like you can't be accountable. If it's my company, right, I can say, hey, I'm putting someone else as a CEO, I'm going to be on the board, and like I'm chill. But at the end of the day, especially in early stage startups, people invest in the co-founders. They don't really care too much about like everyone else. They're like, you are the one who came to meet me. Is you who I'm holding. I don't care about all these other people. Like, you know what I mean? They're focused very much on you. And so I think that for us, what we thought is, look, if deciding to take this time off, we also understand and admit that the company, maybe it's not going to grow as fast. Like we just kind of don't really know where it's like going to go. And I think that neither of us really wanted the stress and the complexity of having to like deal with people being like, well, I gave you my money and like, it now seems like you guys are just like jetting, like what's going on?
So wait, let's put this in context a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? When you had raised $650,000, right? What was the purpose?
What was the goal?
For the raise? So what did investors believe you were going to use the money to do? And aren't those things,
sure,
are they things that you can still do with this new CEO or?
Yeah, sure. So I think when we raised, it was two things. So the first one was growing our audience. And then the second one was coming up with a plan that allows us to actually monetize our audience more effectively so that we have a second revenue stream. And I think like there are a couple of different things that we thought about. The first one is, of course, like there's something around a savings and investing platform for women, which is something that like the team is actually still working on. There was something around like kind of like paid courses or a membership club, which we tested out, but it actually didn't work very well. So we kind of like killed that experiment early on. But those are the things that we wanted to do. And could it still be done with the new CEO? 110%. She's still doing it. However,
on a smaller scale.
No. Yeah, it will be on a smaller scale and it will be a slower climb. But I think what I had found is that doesn't necessarily really matter to people, because at an early stage, people don't invest in a plan. They invest in the person.
Yeah.
Because everyone fully expects that whatever plan it is that you've told me here, I expect that plan to change. Like no one really expects, I think at a seed round, it to be exactly the same, over the next 2 to 3 years. I think that people very much expect
you're able to reach the revenue numbers that you said you were going to reach. I don't think they care.
Even the revenue numbers, I think that people are flexible on. Mm-hmm. I think they just want to know. I mean, they eventually want it to come, but if you miss your target in year 1, year 2, I think people will be somewhat flexible. But I think that like people it's like they're investing in people. They're saying, I'm giving you this money because this plan, it kind of makes sense, whatever. I'm not an expert, but I believe that you will be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think that for us, and because to me, like, I think integrity is a really big thing. And I believe that people gave the money to Yasmin and Afua. They did not necessarily give the money to She Leads Africa. The idea was Yasmin and Afua, I believe that the two of you working full-time, because when people give you money, the expectation is that the founders are going to be there full-time. My expectation is that the two of you are going to be able to like figure this out and like find a way to make it like successful. And I think that for us, when we decided that, look, we wanted to take time off, we felt like we needed to go back to them and say, hey, we're thinking of taking time off. We understand that you invested in us, and like now that is changing. Given that it is changing, like we think the only fair thing is to offer you guys your money back. It's your decision whether or not you take it. What we found is about 75% of like the money, like wanted to take their money out. And like when we spoke to lawyers and stuff, they're like, look, given like the way everything is structured, if the majority wants to take their money out, it's actually much better to just like give everyone their money back. You keep the legal structure like much simpler. You know, you're not getting into all these preference shareholders, common shareholders. It's the two of you. It's simple, it's clean, and like it's easy. And I think that's the decision that we ended up taking. If I'm going to be completely honest, if we had not been able to return that money, I don't think that I would have felt comfortable taking a step back. Because I would just have felt far too guilty that I took people's money and I'm now like, oh, I need a break. It's just kind of a bit ridiculous.
But this is such a boss move, whether you realize it or not. Like the ability to be able to choose and say, listen, I love this company. I've built it to this stage. I wanted to scale, but I've realized that I want to take a step back to find a balance between my life and figure out what, you know, I want this business to do going forward. I think it's such a boss move, but it's also a boss move that comes from a place of privilege. Do you agree?
110%. I do believe that we had, you know, the privilege of the fact that like we had the money to actually be able to return it. I think it also comes from the privileged fact that like when there was a gap in the amount of money that we had in the bank versus, you know, how much we owe to investors, we were both privileged people, so we were able to find the money to kind of cover that gap and like hand everyone their money back. So I don't think that it's something that everyone can do. And so that's why one of the things that I think is important is just to encourage everyone to think very, very carefully before you raise equity finance. It's very, very important that like you understand that once you take people's money, there's a humongous responsibility, I think, to treat that money with due care. And it oftentimes means that you are slightly less flexible. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I think that people need to really think through carefully whether what you prioritize is flexibility or having that money now. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. And I think it is a privilege to decide that I am comfortable taking a year where this business is going slower because I have options and other streams and other sources of money to tide myself over, if that makes sense.
So do you know another thing I think would be interesting to discuss is, you know, the idea that, you know, we live in a country that when it comes down to it, the majority of the population is poor, right? And when, you know, you have any kind of privilege, even when you work hard, people still say, why is it, they almost diminish your work or your achievements because they feel like, oh, this person is from a wealthy family or it was probably easy for them. But I think it's important for us to have more conversations, you know, around things like that, because I think that it's also important to show that wealthy people's kids can still work hard. Not everyone is, you know, lazy and, you know, sitting on their privilege. How do you deal with things like that? How do you deal with challenges like that with people who are like, well, you're privileged, so this
no.
you know what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm trying
I 110% what you're saying. It's so funny because people try and not like play you. People do sometimes when I'm doing like interviews and stuff. So people will be like, so you built this business, but your parents are rich. Discuss. Like, I don't know why you're trying to play me like that. Yeah.
As though do you know the thing for me, what I find interesting about that argument is, so for example, if you say they're like, how many wealthy people in the country, right? Let's say they're 50. How many people's kids are actually creating, you know, businesses, creating jobs, you know, doing something sustainable? So why are we so quick to vilify, you know, people who are using their privilege for good? And does that sometimes deter you from
Yeah. Here's what I would say. Overall, I don't really pay it much. Overall, I don't really pay it much mind. Why? Because at the base and at the core, a lot of what they're saying is somewhat true. So it's like, I'm not going to fight the truth. It is a truth and a fact that because of the fact that I have parents of means, I was able to go to good schools, which gave me the opportunity to get good work experience, which has 150% affected how I was able to build this organization. Without the experiences that I had, like even just at McKinsey, I would not have been able to build SLA with IFWA the way we were able to build it. And I know that the only way I got into McKinsey is because I had a great education, and I was able to have even things like being able to have mock interviews with people and like all those types of things. So I think to me, it's just a fact, and I don't try to run away from it. I acknowledge it. And I just think that it is just a fact of life, right? It is 110% true that yes, it has been easier for me. And I think I don't even look at it as just the money. I also look at the fact that it's a privilege to me to have parents who are hardworking. Because it meant that I grew up seeing hard work. I didn't grow up seeing think about people who their parents might be wealthy, but maybe they just got gifted it or they stole everything. It's going to be a different way that you're going to think about hard work. Money, the reason why I think hard work is a value for me and it's natural to me to work hard is because of the parents that I have. That is also a privilege. So it's not a wealth thing. It's just the fact that I had parents who worked hard. Even take away that one as well. I would say another huge privilege is my parents are really nice people. They are really they're really, really nice, really supportive. Anything. I mean, my dad was SLA's biggest champion. Our first pitch competition, which one of his random friends did he not drag and invite and force and bully to come when these people were like, look, I have 1,001 more important things to do with my time to come to your super daughter's pitch competition, right? And having that support, being able to, when I had businesses challenges, call my parents, having them be able to introduce me to people, that also helped SLA grow. So to me, the privilege isn't just the money. It's the fact that I have tremendously kind parents and I have parents who taught me the value of hard work. To me, to sit down and say that, so when people say, oh, your parents are rich and you've done this, to me, I think it's a simplification. It's actually, no, my privilege is not just wealthy parents. It's wealthy parents, it's kind parents, and it's hardworking parents. And it is nonsensical for me to sit and act like those three things have not made me into the person who I am. And it is not nonsensical to me to now try and say that me being the person who I am has not impacted the business that I've been able to build. So when people say those types of things, I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, it's very true. Everything that you've said is just a fact. So it doesn't really bother me. Now, if it comes to when people are like, okay, well, I now just assume that it means that you didn't have to work hard. I don't really care. It's not really my business. It's not my job to prove to you I've been working hard. If you think I did, I may or may not work hard. I don't know. I mean, it depends on how you define hard work.
No, but you do work hard. Are you joking? How do you pass exams at Ivy League colleges without hard work?
That's what I'm saying is, what I'm saying, I feel like I work hard, but maybe some people will be like, you think that sitting on a thing and pressing laptop is hard? What about people who are walking, they walk 5 miles with something on their head and something, and do you know what I mean? So people can always argue over what they think is hard work and not. So my point is, I'm not even going to get into that argument because it's a waste of my time. It's not my job to prove to you that I am a hard worker. When God sent Yasmin to this earth, and I believe that God gave everybody a letter. This is what you are meant to do on this world. I promise you, when I read that letter from beginning to end, nowhere did it say that your job is to show everybody that you're the hardest worker in this world. So people want to think that I'm not a hard worker. I really don't care. Honestly and truly, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't bother me.
I was about to ask you a question about, what your biggest challenges, were. I wanted this question about privilege to precede that because I know that, that comes up from time to time. And one of the things I really admire about you is the fact that you own it. You're not one of those people who, you have a privileged background, but you want to make up some kind of Odre Legba story in one way or the other. To sort of make other people feel better. And I love the fact that you've used your privilege in such a positive way to impact thousands of women's lives across Africa. And I'm sure that She Leads Africa is going to do like a lot more. But even with all your privilege, even with all your Ivy League education and your smarts and everything, and having a brilliant co-founder as well, building a business in Nigeria is hard. And
it's hard. Yeah, it's so hard.
One of the things that I think that, you know, is important to talk about is challenges. I don't know if we share those enough, right? So what have been your biggest challenges with building She Leads Africa to this point?
Quick shout out to our sponsors, Bamboo. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that my current obsession is the Bamboo app. Because I'm trying to get richer, not poorer. And the way the inflation and FX policies are set up in Nigeria, it's become more important to start investing in more dollar-denominated assets. So I'm currently obsessed with Bamboo. This is no joke. Bamboo is an investment platform that gives Africans direct, real-time access to invest in or trade in over 3,500 stocks and ETFs listed on the US stock market from their personal devices. Bamboo makes it fast and easy for members to buy stock in companies they like Amazon, Facebook, Google, Netflix, to name a few. So download the app, guys. This episode of the Smart Money Tribe podcast is powered by Bamboo.
General problems from problems that I think have been specific to me as a person. So I mean, like general problems, just building a business. One, like the economy, like the fact that we've been in recession twice since SNA started is deeply problematic. The fact that the economy has not grown faster than 2% at a time since SNA started, also problematic. The fact that when SNA started, we were at 175 to $1 to 1 naira, 175 naira to $1, we're now at 500. These are all macro things that are just hard to avoid, especially given
108 naira.
Right?
£1.
And I think that it's insane. And these are things that, given the business that we run, are really problematic. There are some businesses that do really well in recessions, right? And there are some, because of the nature of our business and like the fact that so much of it was built around like marketing budgets and the ability to get that from big companies, that suffer. And those businesses will tend to suffer during downturns. And so that has just made it difficult. Number one, broader economy. Number two, obviously we have talent, right? I mean, we have a situation in Nigeria where the education systems aren't great. And not only that, but a lot of the education systems do not teach people, or they actually even deter people from being creative and being proactive. Like we are the country of rote learning. We are the country where it's like, just memorize what your teacher said and write it down and you'll get an A. Don't try and bring any of your own thinking. Don't try and innovate. Just read the book, regurgitate the book, finish. That is deeply problematic when you come into the workforce, where you are wanting people to take initiative, you're wanting people to be creative, you're wanting people to be able to think through things, critical reasoning, problem solving. These are just all things that are simply just like not taught very well in Nigeria. And so what happens is that when people come into the workplace, you are not only having to, You're not only having to build a business, you're almost having to also like be a school and teach really basic things. And I think it's also very, like, it's harder. It's also hard given the nature of the business that we do, right? Like ours is like, it's a lot of writing and you need to be very creative and all of these types of things. And it's hard to find quality talent in those spaces in Nigeria at a reasonable price. Do you see what I mean? Because obviously the price also matters because you're still a small organization.
Yeah.
And so I would say like those are kind of the broad challenges that I would say in Nigeria. Now, for me personally, I think some of the challenges that I face actually was sometimes also having successful parents. Because the problem is that success will always be, and even if other people don't do it, you always do it well, for me, sorry, not everyone does it. For me, I would always compare SLA to what my parents had built. Because I always had this idea where it's like, hey, Yasmin, you are so privileged. You got the money, you had the nice parents, you had the education, you had everything. So for you, the bar of success has to be much higher. Do you see what I mean? Because it's like, you can't just be like, well, this is good, but it's like, but you've had so much of an advantage over every single other person that it's really not acceptable to do anything that does not match the level of your parents and is not really, really big given all of these privileges that you've had.
I also like my father started UBA. My was one of the board of directors. Etisalat, FSDA.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Do you know what I mean? And then now you're like Slave Festival.
But I think it's good pressure. I think it's good pressure.
Yeah,
I definitely agree. One of the biggest compliments that my father used to give me was, "Your school fees money no waste." And yeah, that used to be such a huge thing for me, like a huge compliment, because I felt like if my parents or my dad who started with so little was able to put me through university and give me this education and, these opportunities, I started from a better place. So I feel like I need to be better, You
need to do more. Yeah, exactly.
Have a bigger impact. So I can completely, understand where you're coming from. But
I was going to say, I know it's a good pressure, but it's also a bad pressure. And what I would say is SLA really taught me, there's so much that I learned over these last 7 years. And I always thought it was a good thing. But one of the things that I realized is that it could actually be extremely destructive, because what would happen was that nothing ever felt good enough. It never felt like it. Always, to this day, it's hard for me to see SLA as a success, because I'm always going to be comparing it to UBA, Everzine, and Etisalat. My mom has a law firm, UBA is not one of the top law firms. It's always was compared in that space. And so it always felt so small and especially financially, because the financial successes that they have had been so much bigger. And so what I found was that throughout SLA, it's I was operating oftentimes from a place of fear, a place of, oh my God, this whole thing is going to mess up and it's going to be so embarrassing. And how could I not figure this out? I've had so many opportunities and why can't I get this right? What's wrong with me? What is going on? You know what I mean? It became that whole thing. It became a thing where I would never stand back and be like, oh, I'm really proud of what I've accomplished, because it'd be like, yeah, but I mean, this is fine, but it's just so lame in comparison to X, Y, and Z. And so the whole thing, especially in the last few years, just became this constant sense of, and so then it almost felt like you were living a lie, because other people would come up to you and be like, oh my God, this is so great. And you would literally be like, no, it's so shit. And I even got to this point where sometimes I would be angry when people complimented SLA, because inside I felt so insecure about the fact that given all the privilege that I had, I felt like it should have been much bigger and much better and much more successful. And I began to realize that this is a really destructive way of thinking about things. And I had to do, and this is actually a lot of the work that I've been able to do since, just taking some time off to think and process. And it's still a battle to me, because my natural inclination is always going to be, but you have so much, you have to do better. But I've had to learn to be able to rest. I've had to learn to be able to be it's not my job to necessarily to not see myself in comparison to my parents, but to see myself as a continuation of them. It's also been really important just to learn that there are so many different successes other than just financial success. I think that we oftentimes use, did you grow $1 billion company or we feel like someone who built $1 billion company has been more successful and is more valid and is more almost important than a person who has built $1 million company. Right?
Yeah.
And I think trying to get out of that thinking, especially in a place like Nigeria where we glorify money so much, is just getting out of that thinking and just being understanding that look, sometimes the fact that you tried, the fact that you took a risk, the fact that you came up with something that was interesting, some people enjoyed it, you helped develop talent, that's all stuff that matters as well, and that like you have to learn to be proud of and to be excited about, even if it's really small. You know, there's something really, really interesting that my dad said to me. He was like, look, Yasmin, like, it's very, very important that you understand that the amount of work it takes to do a $1 million deal is actually the same amount of work that it takes to do a $100 million deal. The difference oftentimes with which one people picked is like luck, right place, right time. You just happen to pick the right opportunity. Maybe you had some special insight. You were in the right room. That's the bifurcation. It is not that the person who has built $1 billion company has worked so much harder and is so much better than someone who has built a business that's doing like $50,000 in revenue, right? Like they could be actually working exactly the same amount of hours, just as hard. But it's like one person picked the wrong industry or one person picked the right one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And understanding that and trying to detangle feelings of self-worth, especially in business and in work, from financial success is also something that was a huge challenge for me, that I think is something that I still like continue to work on. And I do think that as Nigerians, we also all need to like work on, because we're a very money-driven society. And it's so in the water that sometimes you don't even think it. You know, like we assume that people who have more money are smarter than people who have less money. That may or may actually not be true.
Fact,
you know what I mean?
In the country that we live in.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like we expect that people with more money should be able to get more respect. Like there are all these things that we have to learn to detangle goodness and value from money, because they're actually very different things.
Speaking of financial,
so I feel like this is
Speaking of financial success, when you and Ifwa started to, monetize and all of that, at what point did you determine how you compensated yourself? How did you pay each other a salary?
Yeah. So what we did is we only started paying ourselves a salary maybe in the third or fourth year. And what we did at the beginning was we just pegged, initially just for discipline for the first 2 or 3 years, we pegged our salary to the highest paid person in the organization. And so, because that was a good way of disciplining yourself and just sort of saying, look, I'm going to make sure that I am not paid more than anybody else in this company. And kind of, so, that's somewhat how, and then how did we get the salaries for other people, right? It's like somewhat based on market price, what's our budget, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Fantastic. So I want to move now to some rapid fire type personal finance style questions. So what did you do with your first paycheck in life?
Oh my God. Yeah, wait. Let me think. What did I do with my first? Ooh. I feel like I changed all my money. I feel like I changed a lot of it to dollars and invested in an S&P 500, ETF. I just put it into a basic thing that's an ETF of S&P 500. Maybe there are a few bonds, but something like that. It was one of those already created products that I just had to send the money there. But I did change it to dollars, which in hindsight, I think great instinct, Yasmin.
Great instinct. So what is your investment strategy? How do you decide what you want to invest in and how you're going to invest in it?
Yeah, I'm going to
say,
of course. No, so I'm going to say this is still developing because I feel like I'm still growing as an investor. But kind of typically, the way I think about things is, number one, from a baseline, I'm not going to lie, I do try to keep as much, just because of what's happening with Nigeria now, keep as much money as possible in dollars, just as a baseline. I do some Nigeria investing in maybe sometimes they're fixed income instruments and stuff like that. But what I just found, and the concern that I've just always had, is that between the rate of inflation and devaluation, a lot of times some of these instruments are actually not able to cover everything. And so that's why it's I always split my money. There's some stuff that I'm doing in Naira, but then there'll be a lot that I will try to hold in dollars. Broadly, I try to understand myself as an investor. I am quite a conservative investor. I don't like to lose money. It stresses me out a lot. So my portfolio allocation is something like probably about 30-40% in cash. But what I do is I hold it in dollars because, so even though I'm holding it in cash, because if we assume that like the Naira continues to devalue, like I'm, somewhat holding my position, I always translate it back to dollars. Yeah. Then I probably hold about 30-40% in in ETF, like so in stocks. And I tend to only do in equity, and I tend to really only do like ETFs. So I'll have like an S&P 500 ETF. I think I have like one that's focused on like Chinese tech companies, and then one that's focused on like health. And then what I also did was put some money in gold, because that is like, something that in recessions it will always do well. And then I probably have about 5-10% in crypto. And then I probably have another kind of, 10-15% in Nigerian investments. And those ones, I think I have money in a fixed income fund. Though I think I might move it into like the money market fund, because I did want something that was a bit more liquid. And I think that interest rates have also come up slightly. So I might also move it to maybe even T-bills or something like that. I haven't yet dipped toe into like any of the agriculture investments or anything like that, but I probably should. I haven't really done like much startup investing or anything like that. I think at the point that I'm at now, I'm probably a bit risk averse, and I would like want to grow my cash position first before I started putting it in riskier assets. But that's again just because of the nature of myself as an investor.
There's a lot of calculated risk, which is great, but I think it's very balanced. Like, so putting about 5 to 10% in crypto, I think that is, like that's a very risky alternative sort of asset that can either make you a loss of money or lose you a loss of money. But I think that is healthy. That's a healthy amount of risk, to be able to take. The way that you've explained like your portfolio sounds quite, I wouldn't call it conservative.
Okay, balanced. Okay, great. I'm still a balanced investor now.
Yeah.
But one thing that I do encourage people to just think through as you're investing is just trying to understand, look, I think I start from a basic thing of, okay, how much do I want to put into really risky assets? How much do I want to put into like medium? And then how much do I want to put into like safe? First, just like figure out that allocation. And I think that allocation is like a personal one, because the way I see it is when I think about how much I want to put into risky investments, I think if this money wipes out, how will that affect me? And so I will cap it at, if this money is all wiped out, I'm not going to die. I'll be sad, of course, but it's nothing terrible is going to happen. And that's the allocation to risky. Then I will look at medium risk. And for medium risk, what I allocate there is money that I do not need soon, right? Because if you think about it, like medium risk, I would put medium risk as like let's say like US equities, an ETF around that or something like that. Because with those sorts of things, even though they will go up and down in years, overall, it will always go up. Yeah. So that's my like medium term money. This is like money that I'm not trying to touch for the next kind of 3 or whatever years. Then the low risk stuff, which basically for me is cash or like, money markets, like a money market fund, stuff like that. That's like my low risk stuff. And what that is for me is like the like money that I'm going to be needing in the next year or two. But it's also what I call my peace of mind money, in that it's the money that, because I have it, when my risky investments are going up and down, I don't freak out. Do you see what I mean?
I'm going to have high blood pressure.
I don't have high blood pressure. So, like Bitcoin, all the cryptos over the last like 2 or 3 weeks, they went crazy. My like Bitcoin is down something like 40%. But because I can always open my money and see my cash, I'm like, okay, Yasmin, you can wait it out. Just don't sell, wait for it to come back.
I love this particularly because so people will hear Yasmin's investing in crypto. So yeah, that means everyone's investing in crypto. Let me start investing in crypto as well. But now Yasmin's portfolio has allocated 5% to cryptocurrencies, knowing that if it goes down, she's not going to have a heart attack. But some people are taking all of their life saving and putting it in crypto. And then when it goes down, they start saying somebody scammed them, or this thing is a fraud, or this thing is not working out. It's not what they said it was going to be, because we tend to have this money doubling approach to investing, especially I think in this part of the world. But I love like the way that you are running like your asset allocation.
I think, one of the things that's interesting is that I know that there is also maybe a privilege in not being drawn to money doubling, because it's like, I do feel like I have time and there isn't that sense of desperation. And so one of the things that I'm always trying to think through is that for people who like, they really don't have that much, for them, saying something is going to grow 5 or 10% a year might not feel like meaningful sometimes. And so I'm always trying to think for like that type of person, like, or that type of investor profile, what is the appropriate investing advice? Is it just to do like hey, look, you don't have that much to allocate to these risky investments, but that is where the growth is. So do you just push them towards more kind of safe and medium-term investments? Or do you still try to say, hey, look, even if it's only 500 naira that you have, try and split it between different things. Maybe only 10 naira to crypto, 100 naira to this. I don't know. How do you think about that?
So the way I think about it is, first of all, you have to build like the basics. Like you have to have a foundation for your financial life before you start taking certain risks. This is my opinion. So this does not constitute financial advice. I'm just giving my opinion.
Definitely.
I think it's important for people to build up. First, do you have an emergency fund so that you have enough cash for emergencies, right? So my car breaks down, I lose my job, or my business isn't doing well and I've had to live off my savings. Do you have enough cash for that, right? Or as close to cash as possible? Have you started investing in less risky stuff first to start building that muscle? So before you even, some people don't even have the stomach for stocks, but they're talking about cryptocurrency, right? I think it's important to build your investing muscle first so that you understand what your risk appetite is, and then now decide what portion. Crypto is sounding amazing, and risk is basically taking a bet on a future outcome, right? None of us know what the future is. It can go up, it can go down, but I'm taking a bet that, Elon Musk is talking about it, Yasmin is talking about it, quite a few people seem to have crypto in their portfolio. Maybe this is some money that I can afford to play with and put it there. And if it goes to shit, I still have the other stuff that I've invested in to fall back on. I understand it, because we all want to make money. We all want to blow. And it's the impatience, I think, that makes people say, you know what, I'm just going to risk all of my life savings thing because it's going to make me money faster. I feel like that when you invest from a place of greed or desperation without thinking it through first is when people get into trouble. I think when you're investing in any asset class, whether it sounds popular or not, you always have to think about the upside and the downside. The typical Nigerian always thinks only of the upside and never the downside. But I think investing has to prepare for the downside.
100%. That's really good.
So I think what you're doing, how you're going about it is amazing. But what has been your most profitable investment? What would you say has been your most profitable investment?
In terms of returns or total amounts?
Yeah, in general.
Okay, so if it's like the return number, it's been Ethereum. My Ethereum. Speaking of crypto, I can't lie. Ethereum did, but Bitcoin has been my worst. So this is what I'm telling people, it's been on the opposite side, because I think it all depends on when you got in.
Yeah.
I mean, because I initially invested in Bitcoin maybe in 2017. I honestly forgot about it, and then I checked it in 2020, and I was like, woo! So I took all the money out. It's stupid. I should have left it in. Then I saw Bitcoin started going higher. I was like, gosh, let me try and get back in. So I invested in February when Bitcoin was at like 60K. And I also put, I put some in Bitcoin, but I put more in Ethereum because I always felt like Ethereum's price right now, I think it's maybe something like around 2K or something like that, $2,000 per coin, whereas Bitcoin was more like $60,000. So I felt like, okay, look, Ethereum probably had a bit more growth potential than that Bitcoin might have. And what I found is over that period, my Ethereum has gone up maybe something like 35-40% in like 3 months, whereas my Bitcoin has gone down like 30-40% in that same period of time, maybe now even closer to like 50%. But luckily, because I put slightly more money in Ethereum, overall the portfolio was still up. So those have been my best and worst. In terms of total amount, it would probably be gold, because I put the most, like the single thing the single instrument that I have the most money in is actually gold. Because yes, I have money in ETF, all these other mix, but if I was to pick like one thing, it has been gold. And for some reason, gold has done really, really well this year. And so because the base of the percentage growth, right, is higher, if I was like, okay, which investment has made me the single most dollar amount, it's been that money that I put in gold. But if you're talking about just return as a percentage, it's definitely been Ethereum. And it's so interesting because Ethereum and gold are like on totally different ends of, the typical risk and return frame that you would think about. You know what I mean? Like Ethereum, you would think about something that's like super risky, whereas gold is much more defensive. But it's worked out really well for me. And I have to say, like, I'm very happy I put that money in gold because it's one of the things that has steadied my portfolio.
Exactly. And that is what makes the way you structured your portfolio very interesting. So no matter what's happening in the world, like some indicators are going to make some asset classes more profitable in certain seasons, while for others they'll be down in certain seasons, which is also an opportunity to get in. So I think it's amazing. What I love about cryptocurrency right now is I think it's a great place to put your play money if you're not like a big risk taker, because it's like up today, down tomorrow. So there are big margins for you to be able to make like, big profits, but also there's the downside of, losing the money.
Honestly.
Careful. But it's quite interesting. So what's been your biggest money mistake? What would you say has been a mistake? An outright...
Oh my God. Oh God. I've had 2 startups, the investing things that I've like given some debt to someone, and both of those has gone so badly. But then other people's startup investments have done really well, so I can't say that was it. But I think that I didn't really investigate the character of the people who I was putting money in, and that made it a bit more problematic. I would say that's been a big one. I think that's been my biggest money mistake. Putting money in and not, especially in startups, you have to do. Yeah, you have to do a lot of research on like the people who you're investing in. Whereas I focus much more on, does this business idea make sense? And that's why it kind of connects to what we're talking about with like SLA and us giving our money back to investors. Just understand that when you're investing in a startup, you're investing in a person. The business idea, obviously you want it to roughly make sense, and hopefully a sensible person would have come up with a sensible business plan. We also have to understand that there are going to be so many twists and turns. I mean, if you're investing in a startup, you're in for like 5 to 7 years or something like that. There are going to be so many twists and turns that cannot be captured in a plan, that you really are depending on the person who you've invested in. And you have to spend a lot of time, I think, evaluating that person. And so that's why I said that, like, for me, I haven't been doing that many startup investments recently, because I'm not at the place yet where, and I'm still doing research to develop a view on how do I assess, because I know how to assess a business plan more or less, but how do I assess a person? I think that's something that I'm still learning. And so it's only once I feel like I've learned that I would then feel more comfortable going back to startup investing, which is definitely something that I know I'm going to do more of in the future. But I do think that, like, given the 2 negative experiences that I had, I did want to kind of take a step back and be like, look, let me analyze what went wrong. So I'm moving forward in more confidence and faith.
That's very interesting because, startups is especially in this part of the world, is like touch and go. You don't know whether the business idea is going to thrive or not. But you're right. Like, I think the integrity of the person is extremely important, because even when things go bad, you want a person who, has integrity, that's going to manage it properly and not just
110%.
I agree. So what are your guilty pleasures when it comes to spending?
Guilty pleasures. Oh my God, it's so bad. I love art. I buy a lot of art. I buy a lot of art. It's really not acceptable. I've run out of wall space. I love art. I spend a lot of money shamelessly on art. It brings me supreme amounts of pleasure. So that's it. That's number one. And number two is holidays. When I holiday, I will count my coins properly, because I'm going to enjoy. I am going to have an A1 chef's kiss.
One of my favorite guilty pleasures. It should be trademarked.
Those are the main things. Honestly, those are the main things. Art and holidays. If I get to the point, once I get to the point where I can feed my love of nice holidays and my love of art, I'm good. Let me retire and go home.
I love it. So you got married recently.
I did.
In my opinion, like, just watching you and Lamide, I love it. On your Insta stories, I think both of you are hilarious. But what I find most interesting about it is how non-traditional you seem to be, right? Like, I like how you seem to sort of rebel against like the norms of what a young wife should do and what it means to even be a wife. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about, how both of you manage, that dynamic, like still being, this independent woman who is married to this young, financially successful guy as well, who is working in finance. How do you guys talk about, managing your family's finances and, how you run your household as it pertains to money, given that you're this traditional couple?
No, of course. And I think definitely could have been the only way for me. I don't think that I would have worked well in a really just traditional Nigerian dynamic. I think it's really important to like know yourself and like know what types of situations you're going to like blossom in. And I think that for me, if we think of traditional Nigerian marriages where like, the guy tends to be more about his business and the work and the woman is more about the home, like it was never really going to work for me, because I love working. I really do. It gives me joy. Where I get my sense of self-esteem from is from my work. And sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing, but it's very much just like the way I function. And so I think that like when I was looking for a partner, it was very, very important to me to have a partner who understood what was important to me, to have someone who I think supported me. But to me, it wasn't just about them. It was also about their family, because I think in Nigeria, you're not just marrying an individual, you're also marrying a family. And it's not just in terms of maybe you have a crazy mother-in-law that will come and be stressing you out, but it's also about like, look, when Lamide and I fight, sometimes like I'm gonna go, like I'm really close to my parents. I'll talk to my parents, like especially my dad, like can you imagine? And it's my dad who will talk me down and be like, yeah, you're being a bit crazy, you might want to chill a little bit. And so the reason why family, and even not sometimes if it's not my dad, it'll be my sister, it'll be my mom. And that's why family is really important, because when you guys have arguments, a lot of the times, sometimes you sort it out by yourself, but sometimes they go and vent to family members. Yeah. And the advice that they get from them is also really important because that then a lot of times impacts the way they work. And so for me, it wasn't just Lamide, it's also like his parents are great. Like his dad was a really involved dad. Like his dad used to like coach his like football team at school. His dad was a very involved dad. So Lamide like grew up just not, and he didn't actually grow up in Nigeria. He only moved back when he was like 16. So I feel like he also grew up with his dad where like their parents had a really like much more of a balanced like partnership where like his dad did a lot of home stuff, just like his mom also worked. And so I think that it was very, very important for me to find that right partner. Because to me, look, marriage is not do or die. I can be single and I can be happy. Every single way you find me, married, single, divorced, widowed, kinny P, I will just find a way to find like happiness and peace. And so to me, I was really only going to get married if I felt like actually going to like get me to a better place. This is going to improve me as a human being. And this is something that I think is going to be beneficial. If it's going to be a negative, I would just rather not do it because like I don't like stress. Now, in terms of finance, like, and how we split, like we very much like split household expenses equally. So we sat down, we did a budget, and what we have is we have a separate account that is like the household account. And we sat down, we said, look, every single month, this is the amount that everybody has to put into the household account, right? Yeah. And I mean, so far, we've always been able to make up everyone to pay their share. Now, I do understand that there might be sometimes, let's say Lamide says now doesn't, you know, he wants to be an entrepreneur, and there's going to be a period of time where, you know, you're not making that much, what's the word? You're not making as much money. If that time comes, sure, there's a period of time where Yasmin's going to have to cover more of the money. But for now, what we've done, and vice versa, of course, right? But for now, what we've done is we basically just like split the household expenses. But then individual things, you know, we will just cover for ourselves. If I'm going to get my nails done, that's not a joint expense, that's a Yasmin expense. You know, there's sometimes, you know, Lamide will like treat me or something, like if he's going to do his thing. If I'm doing just my general shopping, I'll do, you know, my own stuff. Then, you know, we also split like rent versus like the doing up of the house. So for example, like Lamide covers rent, but like all like furnishing and like everything to do with like the interior of the house, like
your
I cover. It's my responsibility. Then what we do with holidays is that we also will split them. So if we want to go on a holiday, we'll kind of sit down and everyone will just say, look, based on my budget, because we all know, I mean, I know how much I make, I know how much I'm putting in the family account, so I now know how much, okay, this is how much I have to expend on a holiday. So we'll just sit down and say, everybody, how much are you willing to spend on this holiday? And then we know, okay, this is the total amount that we're playing with. And then we'll then choose based on that. And what, you know, we try to do is sometimes I can put in much more to a holiday than Lamide can. Sometimes he can put more than I can. So we don't try to be like because you're the guy, you're responsible. It's very much like, everybody look at your expenses and see what you can do. If all you can do for this holiday is $500, then fine. Let's carry ourselves to Abuja. We enjoy a nice holiday in Abuja. We come back. If we have more money, great. Like for our honeymoon, we were able to go to the Maldives. Fantastic. Our anniversary is coming up, right? Like I think I mentioned to you that we both happen to be in the States. We can only do this time like a 3-day long weekend. We can't afford to now do a week or 2 weeks or whatever, like away. Yeah. Because we all sat down and we said, what's the amount that you're willing to spend on this? So what we try to do is kind of the basics, sort of split between each other. And then for like extra stuff, if it's extra stuff that it's purely for yourself, you pay for it by yourself. If it's extra stuff that we're paying for together, it's just sitting down and having a conversation. Okay, how much do I want to spend on this luxury? And like, if we don't have that much at the time, please sit in your house and drink water, and it is what it is.
I love how it's such a partnership, like a true partnership where you both seem to understand each other and have, you know, the right conversations about money so that no one is getting on anyone's nerves.
Yeah, 100%. And one thing that I had to learn and also mentally prepare for is that on just understanding and acknowledging that like sometimes someone might have to shoulder more financial burden than another, and being okay and comfortable like with that. I think that there was like a period of time where I was very much like, look, if you want to start your own business and be an entrepreneur, that's all very good and well, but you know, you still have to send the money every month. So, you know, you better make sure that you are saving well. But I think also part of what I'm learning and evolving is that like sometimes in a partnership, like you're going to have each other. And so if I decide, for example, I want to go back to school for a year, like Lamide will have to be like, okay, that's a year where you're not earning income. And so I'm going to have to take up more of the burden. And similarly, what I also have to say to myself is that, Kuli, if he wanted to do the reverse, of course, I have to be like, I got you. You go ahead and do that. I will cover stuff, because at the end of the day, I can't say I want a non-traditional marriage, but then like want traditional finances. You know what I mean? Like I can't say that I want you to like help with, you know, the cooking and the kid stuff, But then when you're like, hey, Yasmin, I want to take time off, I'm like, well, you better go find your savings. So I feel like
about the She's Africa woman keeping it real.
Honestly, yeah.
Holding yourself accountable and saying, listen, I can't be saying all this non-traditional stuff, but, trying to pick and choose, what's going to apply to me or not. I absolutely love it.
100%.
I absolutely love it.
And one thing that I think is like really, really interesting is just that understanding of like cost and benefit of it all. And one of the things that I really had to digest is if you say that you're going to have if you want a guy that is also going to take on some of like the family responsibilities and actually be super present and like engage and like do all of that type of stuff. Like for me, for example, I very much expect that there are times where I have a kid, I go on holiday by myself, one day you need to take care of the child and sort it all out because I like my own space. But I did realize, and it's one of those weird things that I thought I was prepared for, but then when I started thinking about it, I was like, oh my God, this is really scary. But also having the mind space to say, I am also now financially responsible for this family. It's not Lamine's job. And it's weird because I do think that a lot of like my female friends, even the ones who are successful, who work, I still feel like there is this attitude of my money is my money and your money is our money. But for me, if I see that I have a partner who is willing to be engaged on the more traditional like women stuff, I have also accepted that it's give and take. So I also have to be more, I can't do that whole your money is our money, but my money is my money. It's that, look, there are some times where my money is going to have to be our money, right? Because there are some times, for example, where like, I don't want to have to deal with domestic stuff. You have to carry the load. And so I think that just like that balance, mindset, also forcing yourself to really, if you say I'm going to be non-traditional, like you have to do it all the way through, right? When it benefits you, but also when it doesn't benefit you, if you understand what I'm saying. And I think I had to learn that.
I love it. I love it so much. I think so many like young women who are trying to get into marriages, listening to this are probably learning a lot. So final question. The last question I like to leave my guests with. If you won the lottery and you won $1 million, what would you splurge on and what would you invest in?
Ooh, what would I splurge on? I'm going to go back to my art or holidays. I probably buy some nice art or go on holiday. That's what I always do. And then what would I invest it in? To be honest, I think I would use my same allocation that I have now, which is kind of a mix of, cash, ETFs, gold, and then some crypto. I like that balance. I think it's worked for me so far, and I would want it to work again. I would also, if I won the lottery, I would definitely also want to give part of that to, a charitable cause that, matters to me, which is also part of what I do now. So I would try to allocate some to that as well. But I think that's what I would do to, like, on the investing side. The whole other side of it, though, if I didn't do that, is I would just buy an apartment so I don't have to pay rent anymore. Because rent is a terrible expense.
I love it. This has been such an amazing conversation. So insightful, Yasmin. I'm so happy that we got to do this, and I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you so much.
I had so much fun as well. I always love talking. I absolutely love what you're doing with the podcast. I love how thoughtful you are about some of these issues, and even like the questions that you ask. And the way you summarize things, I just find to be like really, really helpful. And so I'm just excited to be on here, and grateful to everyone for listening in, and grateful for you for also having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Smart Money Tribe podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm super excited about creating financial content for African millennial women who want to live a fabulous life, but also want to learn how to find the balance between spending on their lifestyle needs and building assets that could protect their financial futures.